Thank you. We're going to go straight into Ms. Dorothy Rothrock's presentation. She's with the California Manufacturers and Technology Association. We're pleased to have you here with us.
Thank you very much, Chair and members. I always enjoy speaking to the Jobs Committee. You're my favorite committee. I want all the bills to come before you. I really do appreciate the chance to share with you our perspective on what's been happening in the last few years, especially with all the new members, to bring everybody up to speed on what's happening with manufacturing. CMTA represents a wide diversity of manufacturing up and down the state, small, large, all different types, high-tech, aerospace, chemical, steel, food, cement, glass, breweries, you name it, we represent them. So what we do is we choose and we focus on things that they all have in common. We've been working along with the others on the Economic Summit, as well as helping Brian McMahon and Tim Rainey and those others working on the workforce development. We're intimately involved with all of those initiatives and very much supportive of them. One of the reasons why manufacturing keeps coming up is two things. One is we value it very highly because of all the R&D that manufacturers do, the multiplier effect, and the high wage. But we're also talking about it because, ironically, it's also under the most pressure in California. So it's what we want the most, and it's what's struggling the most. So let's focus on that a little bit. So this is just a brief summary of some of the challenges for California manufacturing that we're facing. As you know, cost of doing business is high here. The 16 to 33% greater than the U.S. average cost of doing business is from the latest Cal Chamber report that was done. We have electricity rates as of December 2014 that were 70% higher than the U.S. average. This is very alarming because for many years we were only 50% higher. So this is a recent development. We're heading in the wrong direction in terms of competitiveness on electricity. Cap and trade is a big new challenge, regulatory challenge for many manufacturers. The way that operates includes high costs associated with purchasing allowances at auction. Workers' comp, we don't want to be on the top of this list, but we are in fact the highest costs in the U.S. per $100 of payroll. And the skilled workers, you've heard about it earlier, about how difficult it is for us to find skilled workers, but we're very pleased with the progress and the initiatives that are being undertaken on that. The good news is we really do appreciate the work that GoBiz and under Kish's leadership is doing. We really fought for years, for more than a decade, for the sales tax exemption on manufacturing equipment. Many of you may not know that we had a manufacturing investment tax credit prior to 2003. From 1993 to 2003, then it was allowed to expire. For 10 years, we were in the wilderness without that policy. Now it's come back, but it expires in 2022. I challenge this committee to, within the next year or two, please extend that program, make it a committee bill, decide how far you want to go out, and of course look at the data on how effective it is. But the reason why it's important to do it soon is that 2022 is well within the investment horizon for manufacturers. I think you need to have a tax policy at least 10 years alive, with indications that you're likely to extend it beyond that, so long as everything's going well, to send the message that it's safe to be an investor in California. And of course, the CTE competitive grant programs and the other efforts for improving career tech in the schools is something we're very excited about. Okay, we like to track how we're doing in California versus the rest of the country. And the job growth is happening in California, but you see for manufacturing, we are lagging the rest of the country. 7.52% for the United States since January 2010. For California, it's 1.93% job growth for manufacturing. This goes back to the year 2000, just to give you a little history. This is gross domestic product growth in manufacturing, California versus the U.S. You'll see that the U.S. is a similar shape curve, and we actually crossed it one day in 2009. But California has both had more serious downturn as well as a more modest upturn. So you see that the differential now is 33% growth for the United States and only 15% for California. The next chart I'm showing is simply to put green jobs in perspective of the entire economy. CMTA does want us to grow in these new industries and to support, and we like the idea that green jobs are growing in the state. However, it is only a small fraction of the entire economy, and we can't lose sight of the costs of creating those green jobs if, in fact, they do impact the rest of the economy. This is the most important data points, I think, that give you a sense of whether we're doing enough for manufacturing. Manufacturers make investments where they're planning to grow, where they're planning to add employees, where they're planning to build new products, and where they're planning to innovate. This is the way manufacturers vote. So when they're deciding to put money in the ground, it's their decision, yes, I like this place and I'm going to stick around. The numbers, this is 2013, and within a week or two we'll have numbers for you for 2014. But 2013, we only got 1.5% of U.S. manufacturing investment, but we have 11% of manufacturing gross state product. So we are under investing to maintain our level of manufacturing. If you go to the next slide, you'll see what our history has been on a year-to-year basis since 1977. And so there have been years when we've gotten more than our fair share of investment. When we were ramping up on aerospace, for example, that year we got 17% of U.S. investment. And then in the late 1990s, we got a lot of information technology investments for manufacturing. But since 2001, we've never exceeded 3%. And so the question is, we're now heading on to almost 14 years of lower than we need investments in manufacturing. I think this has a lot to do with why we're seeing the weak job growth, because unless companies are modernizing, expanding, they're dying. They're kind of like sharks. Got to keep moving or they're going to die. So that wasn't in my notes. I just made that one up. All right. We have, you never know what I'm going to say. Pay attention. We have an agenda here that is designed to, we know that California is going to be a progressive state. We know it's never going to be the lowest cost. And we know there's a high degree of importance being put on energy efficiency and climate change and reducing emissions. So let's go down that road. But let's make sure that manufacturing survives and grows in that context. So how do we do that? First of all, we need to make sure that our climate change goals can be technologically complied with, that we've got the tools and the equipment and the mechanisms to actually reduce emissions and stay competitive. I think a big part of our climate goal, succeeding in that, as well as with income inequality and some of these other goals, extending that manufacturing tax and job credit policy is important. The workforce development, we've heard about that. Here's modernizing the labor code to add flexibility is something that I think you really need to look at. We're living in a regulatory structure that was built decades and decades ago. And we need to look at what does a modern workplace look like, what is the kind of flexibility that workers want, what's the kind of flexibility that employers need for their various processes. Please look at that as an opportunity to add value to California that may not exist in other places. We should be as modern about these policies as we are about our energy, climate, environmental policies. And finally, remove barriers for energy management and efficiency. There's a lot of tariffs and rules with regard to how we accept or purchase energy supplies that need to be updated and made more favorable for manufacturers. And that's the end of my prepared remarks. I do want to say a few things about how I view your committee and what I hope that you take on. The question's been asked for others, so I'm going to presume that somebody's asking me that question right now. The climate change initiative is sort of overarching a lot of what the manufacturers are thinking about. And it's really not an environmental policy so far as we're concerned. It's been called a transformation of the economy. And so I think it's right in the middle of your wheelhouse. And I think you have a role in really helping your colleagues understand the economic implications of those proposals. So I really do hope that you ask for the reports, the analysis of costs and benefits, look at actual job numbers, wages, hold hearings on some of these proposals so that the jobs and investment messages can be built into the decision making. The other policy committees do their work, and I'm not saying they don't do a good job, but that's what their focus is on, the environment, or their focus is on energy. It's not about the economy. You've got to take that up. One of the reasons why I think it's so important that you take on that climate change role is that one of the reasons for California's leadership is to show other states and countries the way in which it should be done. Now, other states and countries want healthy manufacturing economies. If they see California sacrificing manufacturing or saying, well, we're a modern economy, we're not going to do that traditional manufacturing anymore, then other states and countries are going to look at us and say, well, we can't model that because we want our steel, we want our cement, we're making glass, it's what we do, and somebody's got to do it because we're selling it into California anyway. So, you know, it's part of what we have to do to show leadership on climate change, to make sure we're maintaining at least what we have in manufacturing and show that it can be done. I think it's a failure if we don't. It will be considered a cautionary tale for others if we fail to do that, and will be considered an outlier. One of the things I'd just like to say in closing is that I won't be able to speak directly to you as much as I used to, because I was a lobbyist for many years and enjoyed fighting on all the individual bills. But I have a great team with Michael Shaw and Nicole and Mike Rogie. When they are going to be taking positions on important bills for manufacturing throughout this session, it'll be through the lens of trying to achieve those goals. We'll be suggesting something might not be necessary, or it's happening too quick, or it hasn't been well thought out, or the analysis isn't complete to understand the cost and benefits. These are the kinds of arguments we're going to be making, but it's all in light of trying to actually achieve these goals to make sure that we're not becoming something of an exception, but rather something that the other states and countries really want to follow. Thank you very much.
Ms. Rothrock, thank you. And Mr. Granillo, I'm going to open it up for questions. We'll start over here to my left.
First of all, thank you so much for both of your presentations. And Paul, you know I'm very fond of you and the Inland Empire and what we're able to accomplish out there. I'm wondering, as you talk about, and as I always talk about the spine of California, what else can we do here in this House to help the spine of California? Because it seems that many times, and I have nothing against the coast or San Jose or any of the other areas, but many times our efforts and everything, all of our attention is paid on that coastal side. What do we need in the interior and on the spine of California? Because if you don't have a strong spine, if you know your body, you don't have a strong spine, then your body's going to fall apart. Well, if you don't have a strong spine in California, then California can't be as strong as it could really be.
I would say that what Dorothy said about being a balance, being a check. So Inland Empire, 4.3 million, 829,000 people now living in poverty. 4.3 million, 829,000 living in poverty. okay? So again, it's this ripple effect. I have a $350,000 house in Redlands. If I pick it up and take it to Orange County, it now costs $750,000, $400,000 difference. Art Agnos, the former mayor of San Francisco, when asked about affordable housing in the city of San Francisco, said this is an issue for people who make $85,000 to $100,000. For the poor, this is not an issue. So where are those poor going, right? They're leaving the city and they're going inland. And if you're not careful and there isn't a check in many of these regulatory issues, tax issues, you're going to wind up governing two different states. One that is going to do incredibly well and another one that is going to have serious, serious social justice issues. And it is good that California's economy is growing and that we're now the 7th and we've passed Brazil. But I would remind you that Brazil has some of the worst poverty in the world, okay? And this economic disparity is growing. And we need good leadership in the elected realm to make sure that, yes, let us deal with climate change. Let us have the best environment that we can, but it can't come at the cost of livelihood for many of our residents.
Thank you. Thank you.
Vice Chair.
Thank you so much. While I'm encouraged that individually you're doing a great job in inland areas and throughout the state, different stakeholders are doing the best they can to make sure that we do what we need to do to retain businesses here, especially in the manufacturing sector, but we realize we need to do more. And it was a little bit alarming to hear from you, Ms. Dorothy Rothrock, that looking at this chart that you provided us, manufacturing trend, California versus U.S., this is alarming. So I wanted to ask you, I mean, when United States in general has 33.6% manufacturing GDP growth compared to California's 15.2% manufacturing GDP growth, can you quickly tell me where are those manufacturing jobs, if not in California? Just out of curiosity, because I think we really want to know what other states are doing, and we want to be able to replicate if there is any way that we can do what the other states are doing to try to attract businesses back or retain them here.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. We're watching other states with great interest because they are making manufacturing a very high priority goal for their economies. Indiana is doing very well. A lot of the old Rust Belt states are doing well, South Central states. Even Michigan and Ohio, some of the older industrial states are changing their orientation to really take the lead in trying to regain their manufacturing strength. The chart that shows for 2013 the level of manufacturing for that particular year, those investments, it's very small print, but you'll see along the bottom Louisiana, Kentucky, Missouri, some of those had the highest levels of investment for that particular year. And while year to year it may change a little bit state to state, you can kind of see some of those that are at the highest end.
Great. Well, you mentioned California is underinvesting in retaining programs to retain our manufacturing jobs here in California. So for that matter, I think it is really encouraging to hear, and you are asking specific requests to the legislature in terms of continuing the manufacturing tax programs. And I think this is something that I think our committee would be very much interested in looking into. You recommended that, soon rather than later, that we consider extending this program, which expires in 2022. But we need to start thinking ahead, as you said. These programs will need to be thought out well in advance so that those would continue and make it successful. So I'll be in favor of that, and I will direct the staff to look into that and see if we could come up with some legislative bill ideas to try to do that for all of us. So just wanted to, in closing, thank you so much for doing what you do. And we agree that manufacturing is one segment that is really important to continue to create jobs. And when we have a very healthy job-creating environment, then it is win-win for everybody. So you will just consider this committee as one of the advocates in the Assembly
It's
in
my home.
that fashion.
Yes. Let's have a hearing every week. Keep talking about it.
We'll have a conversation.
Tony's going,
every
no.
week.
We have,
Thank you very much.
We have one question from Assemblymember Kansachu.
Thank you very much. I just was curious to know the impact in the inland area without the RDA.
The impact of the loss of redevelopment has been very severe. And this is another area where you can be, again, I think, a very important check. And we hear a lot about transit-oriented development. Now, the Inland Empire has had great growth, but my family has lived in the Inland Empire in Redlands for 110 years. So that city has been there for 115 years. The city of San Bernardino, 200 years. With the loss of redevelopment and then a push towards transit-oriented development, that it doesn't match, because where do the cities, we were talking major infrastructure expenditure in order to get things up to where they need to be, and that tool is not there. So one of the goals of the summit, certainly, and I think one of the wins of the summit has been, looking at the new infrastructure methods, and that's extremely important for our area. And I would also add that we're a region of 4.3 million, on our way to 6 million, fastest growing area in the United States. Our need to continue to invest in infrastructure and freeways and roads is still there. It is still there. And that is also going to be a great job creator for us if we do it right.
Thank you very much. Like I stressed earlier with the gentleman from the governor's office, that we need to really put the infrastructure as well as the housing into the consideration of the economic growth, and I'm hoping that you will add those two bullets on your agenda in the next presentation. In the inland area, do you have like 20% RDA money, 20% for low-income housing?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. But the housing is not a big issue there.
No, housing is...
Yeah.
It's still a big issue. So it hurts them in the housing side as well as the infrastructure side without the RDA. Great, thank you.
Ms. Brown.
However, when you talk about the Inland Empire, I think we need to talk about housing, because we had the worst of the housing downturn, because we were sold all the bad loans, and all the things that could happen with that happened. And as a result, people don't have houses.
Yeah.
However, their houses are still sitting there. It's just investors have come in and purchased those houses. I'm not against anybody's business, because that's pretty much what I'm about. However, that business model has created a huge problem. Now the rents are going up, and people don't have jobs locally. So that means they have to get on the freeway and drive to Orange County or drive to Los Angeles or someplace where there are jobs. So whenever people talk about housing, it's different than in San Jose, where I'm sure if something goes vacant, it's picked up right away. No, it'll stay there for quite a while.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. I think, as you can hear the music in the background, it's kind of the end of the movie. And what I would like to do is jump right into public comments. As opposed to 3 minutes, I'd like to give individuals 1 minute so that we can also move forward with the rest of the business of the day. But thank all the panelists. We really appreciate your time and commitment to this very important conversation. I think we walk away with a significant amount of information and next steps, and you heard some of those coming from the questions and comments made by the various members. So the first speaker is Mr. Mark Epstein with the California Environmental Technology Education Network.
Okay, thank you very much. Over the past decade, have opportunity to work with the high school career pathway, academy and pathway programs, and seen a number of patterns as far as needs as to meet the potential workforce demand. And that falls into two categories. One is with the community colleges, reform of the articulation credit by exam process. That needs to be, one, a flexibility where the high schools can make agreements with any community college in the state and not be restricted to their service area. And this also gets extended to the WIBs with the changes in the Workforce Opportunity Act. The second is we need to change and we need to eliminate the 12-unit residency requirement on the granting of the credit to the students for credit by exam that's issued at the time of the completion of the requirements. Third, we need a mechanism where the individual students, and again this applies more to the potential with WIB clients, are able to petition for credit by exam without the residency requirement. The second area is dealing with the sequencing of courses. In high schools, depending on what program you're in, you've got a 2 or 3 year sequence. We need to go to a uniform 3-year sequencing, and we need some performance standards and conversations with career technical education teachers. What we really need as a performance standards is an expectation that 40% of the students who enter in as the first year go to a second year, and 30% of those first-year students go into the third year to have the continued eligibility of funding.
Thank you. Nicholas Loret de Mola, California Workforce Association.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. My name is Nicholas Loret de Mola, speaking on behalf of the California Workforce Association. We represent the 49 local workforce investment boards around the state. Our membership also includes representatives from K-12, higher education, industry, labor, and community-based nonprofits. I'd like to just offer our services to this committee in any way possible to support your work, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Our last speaker, Ernie Silva, School for Integrated Academies.
I'm Ernie Silva. I work for the School for Integrated Academics and Technologies, SciTech, and I just wanted also to kind of give you a really quick on what we're doing and how we work. We exclusively partner with Department of Labor career programs. We are a dropout recovery high school. We're at the Job Corps centers in Assemblymember Gibson and Assemblymember Brown's office districts, and we're also with 3 of the one-stop centers in your district as well. And what we do, I want to highlight what WIOA requires is that the diploma, a high school diploma, is a performance metric both for out-of-school youth and dislocated workers. It also requires a local plans to include dropout recovery. We've recovered. We've provided fully accredited public high school diplomas to over 8,300 students in California. Our students are unemployed or underemployed. They're very low income. They're 5 or 6 years below grade level. They're in that opportunity youth sweet spot, 16 to 24, and they're all dropouts. We provide in these partnerships advanced manufacturing training, building trades apprenticeships, Microsoft certificates, all the things that are going to make a difference in these students' lives. There is a code provision now that allows us to operate. It's in the Education Code 47612.1. As you move forward, and I hope to move forward with you, what we want to do is expand those partnerships. They're not taking any money out of the WIBs. It is a standalone program that partners, and it's providing a real difference in the communities that we work, and we look forward to providing those services going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Silva. Once again, thank all the members of the committee for attending today's hearing, and we are adjourned.